So it's great to have you here for the second in the series on You Can Heal Your Life. And the first was really introducing the topic, and we did a demonstration of just a basic prototype of engaging body and mind, and then bringing resources, people who support you, to your heart, and then you and your heart and me supporting you in bringing, sorry, I'm just going to mute everyone, supporting you in bringing healing to the places in yourself that need supporting. That was the first session. And then the second session, which is today, which is, well, what resources do you need to heal your life? What are the inner resources that you need that will help you heal your life? Or what are the resources? Because we'll talk about inner resources and outer resources, both of those two. And then the third session is putting all of this work about healing in the context of personal evolution, of fulfilling your potential in life. That will be the topic of the third session. So it's really great to have you here today for this conversation, for this discussion, because it seems to me so important that we find the resources that really, really make a difference. So I think spending lots of time exploring resources that will help us heal is really crucial to the healing process. And the healing process is crucial to expressing our life calling clearly out into the world, expressing ourselves into the world, because the life calling, our strengths, our psychological resources of life vision, the vision for our lives, helps us make the most of our lives, helps us give our gift to the world. But the things that stop us, the disempowerments, the wounds, the fragilities, the vulnerabilities that stop us from standing up from the crowd, all of that holds us back. And so we need to work both on what's great about ourselves, expressing what's great about ourselves, and also healing what stops us from giving our gift to the world. One of the beautiful things about healing what stops us from giving our gift to the world is that when you've done enough healing on your core wounds, the core things in you that stop you giving your gift to the world, a recognition comes, which is that the path that you've been on to do that healing is a gift. The wound itself is only peripherally a gift. The wound itself got you to do the healing, got you to really explore the nature of that wound and to do that healing. But what you've done, what you have to do to have that healing, to go through that process of healing, becomes a part of your gift. And the amazing thing is that you'll find that your wound is probably intimately connected with your life calling. I mean, that's one of the fascinating things. So my life calling is helping people blossom. And that sounds very new age and nice, doesn't it? But as I mentioned to you last week, the reason that's so important for me is because I came from a very dysfunctional family. I chose to blossom. My twin brother chose heroin, and he died from it. I made the better choice. So blossoming is about more than survival for me, but it was about flourishing and making the most of my life. And you'll find that with most people, you'll find that the core wound, or the process of healing the core wound, is intimately connected with the life calling. And I think that's one of the really beautiful things. But then all the work comes together in the end. At the beginning, we're working on our resources, we're working on what's great about ourselves, we're working on our life calling and our vision and making it happen in the world. And then separately from that, perhaps reluctantly, we're working on healing ourselves and healing our wounds. And we think, as soon as I've healed my wounds, it'll all be great and I'll be able to express my life calling and myself, my soul fully out into the world. And then you discover that the process of healing itself has given you a massive gift that supports your life calling. But today's topic is about just really paying attention to what are the sorts of resources that we need to to help ourselves heal. And so the first point is, well, what's the nature of your wound? What's the nature of your woundedness? And so it could be very typical psychological wound is, insufficiently nourishing and attentive child rearing, that you weren't given the attention that a baby or a child needs to learn. I'm just going to turn the chat off just because I find it distracting. It interrupts my flow. So good question. So blossoming is like flourishing, Gianrico. But I've turned the chat off because otherwise I lose my track, lose my train of thought. So the most obvious psychological wound is that we didn't get seen and nurtured and supported and positively reinforced in our childhood. Perhaps it even started in the womb, because if your mother was very stressed, those stress hormones will have been in her body, and you will have been experiencing anxiety while you were in the womb. And certainly birth is a traumatic process, and unless it's really done with sort of psychological awareness and tenderness, then the birth process itself may be one of the traumas that you have. Hospitals are very, very keen on getting babies out alive and not very good at making sure that the babies are psychologically nurtured and held and supported during that process. The separation from being in the mother's womb to being outside can be brutal, both for the mother and for the baby. So your wounding could have started there, but very often, particularly in the post-agricultural society world, our parents may not be around enough or attentive enough to us as when we're small children, and we end up feeling not seen or not believed in or not cared about or not loved enough, or that something's wrong with us, otherwise we'd get our needs met. All of those things can come up. The obvious antidote to that is that you learn to reparent yourself with the support of a coach or a therapist. And we'll talk about the difference between inner resources, which are the ones in your mind's eye, or in your feelings. Every person who's ever seen you or believed in you or nourished you or cared about you or been compassionate for you, about you, is a potential resource. And any person or being who you can imagine being nourishing towards you and supportive of you and seeing you and believing you can be a resource. Nelson Mandela is one of my resources around persistence and vision, although I've never met him. It's great to remember people who supported you and nourished you, but also you can use anyone, and anyone from a storybook, and you can use animals and pets and fables and myths and legends as inner resources. But we'll talk a little bit more about that, although we demonstrated it last week. The idea that you can access inner resources that support your warm, tender heart, and then you can bring your warm, tender heart to the child in you who was wounded and begin to reparent yourself. Begin to have conversations with the child, such as, your parents were stressed. The problem in the family was not you. The problem in the family was that they weren't attentive to you. They had stuff going on for them. So that's one potential area. Another area is if, perhaps if if the birth process was difficult, or that you were left alone or abandoned, or neglected perhaps as a small baby, you may have this. You may have gone from feeling one with your mother when you were in the womb to feeling separate much too quickly, much more than is healthy. And perhaps you were just left in your cot for half an hour or an hour or a period of time. Or perhaps there were other reinforcing neglect in your childhood. I once ran away from home when I was, I think, 5.5 or 6. And after a number of hours, I got hungry and it was getting dark. And so I went home again. Nobody had noticed that I'd run away from home. That's neglect, isn't it? So, it may be that what you need is a spiritual resource, or the connection with Mother Nature that says, I've never been separate from other human beings. I've never been separate from, the sky and the rain and the air and the ground and the earth. And with every single breath, I am connected with Mother Nature, the biosphere. We're not separate. We never have been separate. So sometimes the connection with nature is what reminds us that we're not separate, is the resource that we need, that enables us to feel included and in contact and in life, connected in life. And sometimes the resource that's needed is some sort of spiritual resource. If it was so difficult for you that what you need is some sense of a higher power that holds you. And it's difficult to talk about this. I was complimented on this the other day because if I talk with the language of one tradition, people from other traditions or no tradition at all get upset. So therefore I try to use as neutral language as possible, because as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't matter what it is you draw on, as long as it works for you. So is there a sense of being held by a higher power that really works for you? Or is there a taste of that, a thread of that can be developed? So for example, I meditate every day on basically 3 Buddhas who I have a personal relationship with now, because I've been meditating on them every day for 20 years, and more than once a day, I talk to them. So how can you develop those inner relationships that will help you heal? The other thing that I think is really important around resources is that if you've got multiple wounding, so there's single event traumas. And by the way, all of this needs to happen in the body, but particularly trauma, the place that trauma gets changed is in the body. And the way you do that is through something called titration, or I call it sipping. Sipping sounds better, where you get into a resourceful state, you get your resources together, and then you just feel a little bit of it, and then back out, and then feel a little bit and back out. Never let yourself get overwhelmed by it, because if you let yourself get overwhelmed by it, some people think that re-traumatizes you again. So it's just being able to bring enough love and enough tenderness to that place in yourself. So that, that sort of, one single event trauma, and then there's multiple event trauma, chronic trauma or complex trauma, where there may be a lot of different things that have affected you and influenced you. One of the things that I've been thinking about recently, there's this terrible word in, sort of anti-racialism theory, which is, the word is intersectionality, which means that if you were disempowered because you were a woman, that's one thing, in a patriarchal society. And then if you were black, that's a second thing, and then if you were handicapped, it's a third thing. And if you were gay, it's a fourth thing. So sometimes there are multiple sources of our disempowerment. And so then you may need multiple internal resources. You may need a stew rather than a single resource. And so I think there's a double process. One is saying, what are the resources that will really support me healing? Identifying the 1 or 2 resources that will really support me in healing. But also recognizing that you may need a broader range of different resources in support. If you've been wounded by several different ways, you may need several different types of inner resource. So, and the basic classes of inner resource are, people you know in the present or in the past, people you know really well or not so well. There could have been an occasion once when someone just looked at you, and said, you're really skillful and talented, you can go far in your life. You may not have known them very well. So those moments can be really powerful, as well as the deeper relationships, particularly with friends, and the sort of friends I call tribe, which is people who really get you. Not necessarily the people you went to school with, or the people in family circles that you call friends, but people who really get you. And it can be people who got you for a time. I will, draw on past girlfriends, past relationships, where there may have been difficult times, particularly when those relationships ended, but there were times when we really saw each other. So you can take snippets, you can take how it was in a particular moment in time. So then there are, the people that you haven't met, the great teachers and mentors. Gregory Bateson is one of mine, although I didn't meet him. Or the founder of Aikido. So who are your heroes? They can be there for you. You can simply ask them, what would you say to me in this situation? And listen to their response and feel that response. And then there's archetypal forms. So, the goddess, the warrior, the female warrior, the grandmother, the grandfather, archetypes of love, archetypes of playfulness, saints and Buddhas. And there's an overlap between what we can call spiritual and what we call archetypal. Archetypal is sometimes used as a way of a psychological word for spiritual. So it doesn't really matter too much. But what are the powers? What's the source of connection with higher power that can really support you? I think for me it's one of the most powerful forms of resource for me. But I've also spent many years looking through all the people in my life from my birth who have supported me. Because, so are you a glass of water half full or a glass of water half empty person? So do you remember all the good things, or do you mainly remember the bad things? Well, I'm, a glass of water half empty person. Or I have been. I've been retraining myself for a long period of time to remember every person who ever was kind, to remember every person who really enjoyed connecting with me, to remember every person who just thought my company was the best, to remember all the moments when people said yes to me. It's a very, for those of you who know NLP, it's a very NLP, neuro-linguistic programming type of thing. But basically we need to go through all of our memories and highlight the positive experiences and low light the difficult experiences. Now, we don't want to get rid of difficult experiences completely because they teach us things. We just don't want them in the forefront of our mind all the time. Mainly with what we want, in the shop window of your mind, the shop window of your mind is what you wake up with in the morning, and what you bring when you meet other people. It's the shop window. People are on the street, they look in the window and they say, hey, that looks interesting, I'll come in. So in the shop window of your mind, you want all your resourceful experiences of feeling good about yourself. In terms of your own psychology, there are two, in terms of your own psychology, there are these two areas of resource. People who you've met, who believe in you, love in you, care about you, support you. But also another type of resource is every time you've been successful at something. Every time you've related well in a relationship. Every time you've been successful at work. Every time you have got into the flow with yourself. For example, as a trainer or a coach or playing tennis. All of those moments of being in the flow are also resources. So that's sort of two ways in which your personal history is a resource. One is the people who believed in you, supported you, loved you, and the other is all the experiences of you being in the flow. And therefore, daydreaming back to those times and remembering times that you were in the flow is really helpful and supportive. So, those are the two sorts of psychological resource, which, I think of slightly differently to the spiritual resources, but it's an artificial division. Sort of one's to do with your own life. Spiritual resources are beyond your own life, and nature is beyond your own life. Somewhere, I can't remember where, there's a sort of statement in psychology that says that self-esteem has two components. Your belief, your view of your own track record, of your own history. Do you remember the good bits and the people who did care about you and believe in you? And if not, good time to start now. And the second is how much you have people in your life now who see you and believe in you. And we'll talk about that more in a moment. So I've covered the topic of inner resources. And just to summarize that back, because I've been going around the conversation, inner resources include every time you were in the flow, every person who saw you and believed in you, people that you've never met but who would bring something to you if you did meet them, famous people, coaches, therapists that you haven't met. But of course, in the ones that you have met, it's great to have those people there for you as well, to talk to those people, to talk to Steve Gilligan or Judith Delosier or Virginia Satir or Fritz Perls or whoever it is was your mentor. And so then the archetypal, nature being a key area of archetypal form. And I think one of the things for me about nature is that I can just go and find nature. The more I go out into nature, the more I can see nature on the street in the city. The little plant that is growing out of a wall. Or if I'm really attuned to nature, I see other people as biological creatures, and I'm amazed at that. And so that for me is a major category, and then sort of beyond that is spiritual. You can also go to cultural, can't you? To collective mind. So all the cultures of the world are potential resources if you feel into that culture. What are the qualities of a particular culture or tradition? And you can read about it, find out about it, learn about it. One of the reasons that people write books on spiritual teachers is that if you read the books, you'll start to pick up some of the energy of that quality. So that's a description of sort of inner resources. And so you take those inner resources, which you want, it's good to see them, hear them, and feel them in your belly, to make sure you feel them directly. Have them support you, particularly your heart, and then bring the combination of them and your heart to anywhere in your body that feels pain or needs nourishment or needs support. And sort of these, I'm making generalizations here. I like saying that we bring those resources to our heart because really the healing force is love. Is compassion. That's the key healing force. So if I just bring those resources to my head, that may not be enough. So bringing them to my heart and then having an empowered heart that brings healing, brings love and tenderness to me. So that's inner resource. I just want to talk to you about outer resources. And by outer resources, I mean people in your life who say yes to you and support you and listen. And it's so important. The research on psychotherapy says the modality is the least important thing. not the least important thing, but not very important. And the the most important things, is that it takes place in the body, it's felt, and secondly, that there is an emotional engagement between you and the practitioner. If you are with someone who is really tender towards you and says, I really get how painful that is, I really get that must have been so awful for the child in you, and they really feel it, and they're sincere and congruent, that has a massive healing impact. Our modern society has tried to teach us that we should all be independent from each other. We never were independent. We can't be independent. When was the last time you went out and collected the food that you eat? Kill the animal if you're a meat eater, or picked up the vegetables. We're all incredibly dependent on everyone. Most of us are dependent on other people to provide us with water. We're not independent. You have to most of us on this call will need to turn a tap on to get water, and somebody is providing that water through the tap system. So we are relationship creatures. We grow under the gaze of others. We grow under the gaze of others. We heal under the gaze of others. And so to be able to really sort of open ourselves to the nourishing gaze of other people is really super important. And those other people fall into a number of categories. I think the most important category is your tribe, your sangha, your community. So unfortunately, not necessarily your husband, wife, or children, not necessarily the people you went to school or university with, not necessarily your colleagues at work, but who are the people who say yes to you, who get you, who support you, who trust you, who care about you, but who believe in you? And who are the people who say yes to you when you're feeling shit, and say yes to you when you're feeling great? And do you have enough of those people in your life? And that's a hard one. Many people are so busy trying to I need to be successful, I'm going to work 20 hours a day, and I don't need friends. I'm just, as long as I get successful, and then my parents will believe in me, and I've made lots of money, and I can, do X, Y, and Z. Slowing down and taking time to receive emotional nourishment from people who really get us is super important, and surrounding ourselves with a community of people who are like that. And just to be clear, there has been some sense of that online in the COVID world. There are online communities can be really powerful, but it's not the same as being in a room with someone where at an unconscious level you are detecting messenger molecules from the other person. There's something that happens at a somatic level when you're face to face with people, which is much deeper than online. And so therefore, however you do it, whatever your risk level is, or your sense of safety around COVID, as much as you can, find ways of seeing people and spending time with them, obviously taking into account the vulnerability of your own immune system. And so really spending time, prioritizing time in those communities. And if you haven't found them, go and look for them. Go to workshops, go to events, go to different types of schools. Go and hang out with the sort of people that you want to spend time with. Find out what they're what sort of organizations are in your local neighborhood. Go and meet people. And make that a massive priority in your life. So that's sort of outer resource. Another class of outer resource, of course, is the teacher, the therapist, and the coach. And I really want to, to say this sort of really clearly. The benefit of having a coach or a therapist or someone who's really well trained in peer group exercises in ongoing groups is that very often the place that's really wounded in ourselves has been holding us back for a long time. And, you know, it's really quite understandable if we're really pissed off with the parts of ourselves that hold us back, because change is difficult. And so sometimes what we really need is somebody else saying, oh, how sweet that part of you is, how wounded that part of you is. It just needs love and attention. I really get the positive intention of whatever it is that you do. You know, whether it's dissociation, you know. One way I dissociate is when I need to dissociate, I look at a lot of YouTube. And at the time, I think it's great. It's only in the morning, having gone to bed at 2:30, that I think, what the hell did I do that for? So, but then to be able to be sweet and tender with that and say, there's a part of you that just, it was too painful and you needed to disconnect, and that's okay too, that's allowed. And so an external person in a coaching therapy or peer coaching or peer therapy relationship can be super important, because they may will to love that part of you before you love that part of you. And then as you observe them, as the adult you know, observes them loving that place in you, you learn to do that yourself. And then the two of you together bring healing to that place in you. So it can, you know, sometimes the hardest person to love is ourselves, isn't it? Or the wounded places. The hardest thing to do is to be tender with the wounded places in ourselves, because we're just, you know, we just wished. You know, I was talking to somebody yesterday, and she's 66, and it was like, why haven't I got this sorted out? You know, we are where we are. Sometimes, I know someone who's been working on personal development for a very, very long time, and he's only just got to the point when he has enough resources to really bring healing into certain places in his body which he had to step out of because of trauma. That is the nature of being human. We're not going to get it sorted out. You know, some of you may get it sorted out quickly because because you were lucky that you didn't get traumatized, as badly as you could have done, or perhaps there was some healing around, you had a traumatic experience, but there was very good quality attention to help you process it soon afterwards. Some people are lucky about that. But whatever age you are, it can be a slow process. And so what are the things that speed it up? It's really learning to be kind to yourself, but really getting support in that process. And it's never too late, by the way. This is where I think the spiritual is really important, because from a spiritual point of view, whichever tradition you look at, you're in, however close you are to the end of your life, that transformation and grace can happen. And you can be a murderer in a prison and find grace, in a life prison sentence. So it's never too late. And in fact, some of the great teachers have been the people who are most wounded. I think Milarepa, one of the founders of Tibetan Buddhist Kagya tradition, I think he had been a murderer. He'd murdered someone. So you just, and also there's a humility, a wisdom through, it not being, when I was 20, I said, if I'm not enlightened by the time I'm 30, I'll commit suicide. That just shows you how messed up I was. So, there's a sort of arrogance to youth, isn't there? An arrogance to the intellect. The intellect thinks it can get things sorted, but actually we've got to sort it in the body. We've got to process it somatically. And that takes time. So, Paul, you had a question. Has the question disappeared, or do you still have a question?
No, it was a bit trite. Among the archetypes, I wondered whether the wounded healer could be an archetype. I mean,
Absolutely.
it is for me.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's such an important archetype, actually, which is that you don't have to be sorted out to be a healer for other people. You need to know particularly enough about yourself so that you don't project your own woundedness onto your clients. That's the sort of the base level requirement, that you've got enough self-awareness so that you don't project that onto your clients. But that's why we all do it. We all do it. So my life calling is for self and others. My life calling is helping people blossom. I'm still recovering from the woundedness of my childhood. I'm still in the process of blossoming and learning, and therefore, because I spent so many years on that, that's also my gift. Because I'm 65. I've been working on the healing process since I was 15. That is 50 years. So I've done a lot. So your own woundedness is a part of your gift as a healer, as long as you're not projecting onto others. Someone had their hand up before you, Gianrico. Who was it? Oh, Marina, and then Gianrico.
Just a quick couple of things. Sometimes the trauma or significant events can happen when you're older as well, can't they? So
Yes,
that can still be a hot button. That was one thing I wanted
absolutely.
to say. And the other thing was about, your life calling.
Yes,
Sometimes your life calling, it depends what's happening out, so I was going to say out in the marketplace. It can go like that, can't it? I guess the core of your life calling won't change, but in terms of how you're delivering that or whatever it is, you might have to be flexible on that. I'd be interested in your comment. And the other thing, Julian, I'm going to have to change device. So when we get onto the meditation, so I'll be leaving, and can you let me in?
okay.
Thank you.
Make it soon, because I lock the room when we start the meditation. But
Yeah, if you just then I'll run and swap.
okay,
Thanks.
that's good. I wanted to comment on so life calling is not a job description. It's not a job. There isn't a job called helping people grow. There's a job called trainer, therapist, coach, teacher, chaplain. There's a lot of different job descriptions that serve a life calling. And so it's true, you may lose a job. And in fact, as you go on through life, you'll find more and more refined ways of expressing your life calling. So, and life calling happens after you've stopped working. I imagine in my healthy old age that I have young people in their 20s who are coming for free coaching. I'll be hopefully, sitting around in my armchair, just coaching young people. I will, if I'm in hospital, when I go to a hospital, now, and also in my old age, I ask people questions about themselves. I engage. I gave blood. I had to have a blood test the other day. I find out about the person. I make sure they're seen. So, paid or not, young or old, life calling always operates, and it can be expressed through different job descriptions. It's not a job description. And yeah, absolutely. I talked about early wound, but of course, you could have a really bad divorce where your partner was keeping something secret from you, and they never, and you were gaslighted about it, and that undermined your trust in the opposite sex, and that would need healing. But very often, with the exception of big, traumatic events like car accidents or deaths and things of that sort, psychological trauma in adult life, there was probably a vulnerability there already if it really impacted you in a big way. So very often, if there's something, one person as an adult, it's like, oh, that was a bad divorce, we really got it wrong. And someone else could be really traumatized by similar circumstances because there was already a seed of disempowerment or mistrust already there. But the main thing is that, so I was never beaten, I was never bullied, I was never hit, I was sexually abused, but not very seriously. And it was when I was a teenager. But I didn't have really terrible stuff happen physically on the outside. Mine was more abandonment. And so it's very easy sometimes people say, but my life wasn't as bad as somebody else's life. The thing is, you're touched in the way that you are touched. You are affected, and you don't compare yourself. Two people can be on a battlefield. They can both see somebody's head blown off. One of them will recover quickly, the other one won't. That doesn't make one of them better than the other, just different responses. So never put yourself down by saying that what's happened to you isn't as bad as somebody else's. Great, let's keep moving. Genrika, you had a question, then I want to get into the meditation.
Yeah, it's stressing after 1 year. I understand you speak since 1 year of blossom, and I thought you mean blessing, you know. But for me it was completely okay. That's you know, and it was okay. It was super. But how sometimes it is to understand very well the language, you know. It makes, of course, a difference, that make a difference, no? To say, okay, it's
Yeah, absolutely, Genrika. And I always really have admiration for people who are doing this in their second language. Quite a few people here are, you know, and I talk fast as well. So do ask questions, do ask me to explain a word. I remember actually once in Italy, I was teaching in Italy, and I said something that was so English that the translator nearly had a heart attack. You know, it's sort of thing that not even English people would necessarily completely understand. But in English, there's an idea about if you're being very busy, you're like a blue-arsed fly, like a blue fly buzzing around. And then another way of being really busy in a manic way is to say that you're like a headless chicken, a chicken that's had its head cut off. And so I said to this in Italy with a translator, oh, you know, those business people who are like a cross between a headless chicken and a blue-arsed fly. And, you know, the translator, you know, we had to spend about 20 minutes dissecting that sentence. So I'm really appreciative of those people for whom this is English is a second language. And if you have questions, just stop me and ask. Just put your hand up and stop me and ask.
And related quick to this, it's also now after 1 year to listen to your NLP guys. It's also how you use the terminology. It's also a different, which make a difference. Nevertheless, being a systemic therapist, a family therapist, it's of course sometimes also for me say, aha, I need to read and what, but it's okay. It's still going on to learning.
Great. Great. Okay, I think it's time. Thank you, Enrico. Let's do a meditation on the subject of resources. And I really want to focus this meditation on what is the resource, what resources do you need that will really make a difference to your healing journey at this time. That is the topic of the resource, of the meditation. And, you know, as you know, some people like to turn their cameras off, and that's fine for the meditation, but it's great that some people keep their cameras on, because I respond to the people that I see. And so, but either is good for the meditation. And so I'm just getting really present with my body. I invite you to get present with your body. By the way, NLP stands for Naturally Loving Person. So, feeling just comfortable in your body, noticing the comfort and also perhaps any tension as well. Just saying yes to tension. I have some tension in my skin. And I can just be aware of that. So I'm just really paying attention to my feet, my skin, all those big muscle blocks in my body. The air on my skin. Yeah, it's great to move as well if you want to so that you feel your body more. Sometimes it can be great just to make very small movements. Like just really sensing, just being curious about your body. And then I'm including sound as well. Listening to the sounds in the room, outside the room, in my body. Listening to my inner voice. Listening to my inner voice from a distance. Like, oh, isn't that interesting? But not following it. It's like someone talking to you at a networking event. Just observe it rather than pay too much attention to it. And noticing any images in your mind's eye, or if your eyes are open, what you see. And let's invite resources that will help us figure out what are the most important resources for our healing at the moment. So we're going to first, who can help you? Who or what can help you work out what are the resources that you most need to help you heal in your life? Now, who's your guardian angel? Who's the saint or Buddha? It could be Mother Earth. It could be your sense of the infinite size of the galaxy, or in fact the universe. Could be a character from a childhood book. What's the wisest being that you feel connected to? And just how do you experience them? Can you experience them close? Seeing them and feeling them in your belly, in your heart. You know, I'm such a miserable soul. I need to have my saints close to me. So here we are with the wisest being we know or can imagine. And feel that the impact of that being in your belly, in your heart, in your body. Relax and enjoy that feeling. And ask that being, ask yourself, what resources, what inner resources do I need to heal myself in my life? Do I need someone who's like a parent to me or could be like a parent to me? Do I need a psychological magician like Milton Erickson? Do I need an archetypal mother figure? Or father figure? Do I need a saint or a Buddha? Maybe I can have a saint or a Buddha who is also a father or a mother figure or a lover or a really good friend. I need someone who can help get inside my body and bring healing into my body, wherever it is that hurts. We need beings that will bring energy, will help us bring attention and energy, healing energy to those places in ourselves. So who or what comes to you? What do they look like? What do they sound like? How do they feel? How does it feel in you? Where do you feel these resources? It's not just a feeling, it may be a conversation. Your wise adult mind, your warm, tender heart, and the resource person, the guide, the saint, the figure, the friend, may need to talk to the child in you or the adult in you, to the you that got wounded at that time in your life. Sometimes it's bringing energy to a place. Sometimes it's like we're cuddling that place. We're holding that place. Sometimes the metaphor of talking to a child in yourself. Putting your arms round the child in yourself and being really sweet with the child in yourself. And talking to her or him. To just be really sweet with that place, whether it's honey-like energy coming into your body, or whether it's a sweet conversation. And just notice if you have any internal dialogue, inner voice right now. What is it saying? Have some distance and from it, but yet curiosity. Is it trying to have you avoid a feeling that's too difficult to feel? What does it need? Just to be aware of that. That's right. Just to be aware of that. Yeah. It's okay to cry for those who are crying. Sometimes the wise adult mind and the warm tender heart and the resources hold us in such a way that we cry in their arms. Crying is actually a healing process. People who cry have better health than people who can't. And so just being sweet with yourself. Or maybe there's an angry you that needs to be heard, to say yes. You need it, it's right to be angry. The basic thing is just welcoming whatever comes. Welcoming the painful place and saying, yes, we get you. We understand. We're here. We want to support you. just welcoming the place in yourself that's been excluded or hasn't had attention paid to it can in itself be a healing process. And if this is good, that's great. And sometimes these relationships need developing. It's not a one-off thing. We keep learning how to come to the place in ourselves that's wounded. We keep bringing attention. If it's really important, you might need to do this process several times a day, for a month, or once a day, for a long time. From a spiritual point of view, it can be great. It's great to have a rendezvous with God, a date with God every day. And from a psychological point of view, it's great to have a date with yourself every day. To have some special time, some intimate time with yourself, where you bring your warm, tender heart and your resources and your wisdom, the wisdom of life. And you're not asking this place in you to change. You're not asking the wounded place in you to change. You're actually saying, no, I want to hear you. I want to be with you. I want to feel you. You can stay in these feelings for as long as you want. Change in these parts happens spontaneously. They'll happen of their own accord. Just accepting, welcoming, coaching. Sometimes even explaining is needed. One might say to the child, it wasn't that your mother didn't love you, it's just she didn't know how to love. She went out to work because she was depressed and the doctor told her to leave the house, and that's why you got left on your own. Or your angry, distant father, or whatever it was about them. One of the things we have to explain to the child in ourselves is that it was about the carers and the parents. They had the problem, not us as the child. If we didn't get loved properly, it was because they weren't so good at it. They had problems going on. Every baby, every child deserves really good love, really good attention, real sweetness, real attention. And so wherever you are in the process, perhaps perhaps make a commitment to continue this healing journey with yourself. It may be this place in yourself will never fully stop hurting. But if you could welcome it every day, whether if you could be sweet with it every day, if you could build a relationship with it, then that in itself is change and enables change. And when you're ready, I want to invite you to stay deeply connected with yourself, but return to the group, return to connection with us. And I want you to just be really sweet with yourself. So we're going to go into breakout rooms to share about the resources and the healing process. Please only talk about yourself. If somebody wants to cry or is crying, say yes to their tears. If they're angry, say yes to their anger. Don't try and fix anybody. You're in small groups, so if somebody's trying to fix somebody else, stop them. Just stop them. You're just saying, yes, I hear you, I feel you, I see you, I get what's going on. You're not trying to make them feel better. You're not trying to change them. And it's the responsibility of the group to make sure that nobody in the group tries to do that with anybody. Just allow people to be where they are with their experience. If you have a concern about a member of your group, come and talk to me afterwards, but it's not your job you're not there to sort them out. You're there to witness, to say, yes, I hear and see you. Groups of 4, 5 minutes per round per person. Groups of 3, 7 minutes per round. And I will do the timing for the groups of 4. So that's 21 minutes starting now. The rooms are open. Great to have you all back. What I'm interested in is, does anybody need, how are you feeling with your resources, and does anybody need coaching or support, or want to talk through how to strengthen their resources? Georgian, I won't work with you because you're not feeling well today, so I'll work with someone else, I think. Yeah. Great. Sheila and then Catherine.
Okay.
Great, you're here. Fantastic, Sheila. I'm going to spotlight you and me, which is always a bit much, but I'm sure you're used to that by now.
Yeah.
So what is
Yeah.
it? Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, I think I've got a photograph of you and me in a group at Steve Gilligan's house from about 30 years ago.
Oh wow. Yeah. I
Okay.
was in that intensive supervision.
In Encinitas, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So someone sent me the picture. It's God, I look so young. It's hard.
Oh, you should send it to me. I would
I
love
will,
a
I
copy
will.
of that. That would be
Great.
great.
So tell me about, so what is it that I might be able to help you with, or what do you want to explore?
So I want to bring in more like powerful female, because sometimes when I do an exercise like this, I feel like I'm on search mode and not much comes in. Like I couldn't get one for wisdom, and I wanted a female because I'm wanting to bring in more powerful females for
Yeah.
myself. And the Athena came out, but I didn't connect with Athena. That was just my logical mind. And so there wasn't really anything clear. And then sometimes when I do community and tribe, I come out blank. And so I just think sometimes I'll bring in a lot, but I just want that, whether it's real in my life or archetypal or goddess, I want my mind to be able to more easily pull this in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Have you spent time, this is an obvious question, but have you spent time outside of workshops and meditation sessions sort of exploring, looking around and saying, who could these people be? Who could these female archetypes be? And have you read up on them or,
not as much as I'd like to, not as much as I'd like to.
Yeah.
And Julian, honestly, my youngest is 20 and my oldest is 30 some. So I just finished 35 years of parenting.
Wow.
So I have spent so many years supporting the family and parenting that I've just in the past 2 years, now I have this freedom and this different, like now it's like time for me.
Yeah.
And so I'm, in that, it's almost like a new phase. Like, okay, now I want to pull in my resources. I don't have to be the resource. I can
absolutely
bring in my resources. Yeah.
See, I would take time exploring, because of course the resources, when we're in the sort of, the body mind state, we don't want to have to be searching too much with our conscious minds. It's not particularly helpful, But the good time to search with our conscious minds is, it's sort of like, well, let me look around the world and find where, I often get stimulated by books or movies or, for example, I have a Tibetan Buddhist practice and, and then one of the, Tibetan Buddhism, there's, Padmasambhava and Yeshe Sogyal, who trained all the masters. And so she's a sort of great female resource for me. But then I read something about Mary Magdalene, and she was obviously really, from one of the, the apocryphal gospels that have been found, it seems like she and Jesus were very intimate. Someone else, I can't remember which gospel according to Philip. So now I've got them all hanging out together and sort of partying, and I like to do that. I like to sort of, break all the rules. So I've got them all partying up there, and if I need a cuddle, I can get a cuddle, isn't that, and so it's sort of having that sort of attitude, looking for, who are, the powerful, and also there are traditions where they have, that, in Tibetan Buddhism, you have archetypal figures of the innocence of a young woman. Like, and you have the archetypal innocence of the experience of the mother, and then you have the archetypal female figure of the grandmother, and and everything in between. So I think looking around the world, and actually because a lot of psychology and training is unintentionally patriarchal.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
A lot of the figures, the heroic figures, are male figures, and that is something that we have to address. And also, even the concept of heroic is
it's male.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So
and
the whole
even teachers, most teachers are male. Most of my teachers have been male.
Yeah.
It's like now I'm like, no, I want to bring in. I'm not anti-male. I want to bring in the powerful female for my female circle around me.
Yeah. And I think, certainly as a teacher myself, it's one of the things that I'm exploring is, because I should, if I was had gender equality, every story I use about a famous person should be 50-50, not 50-50, but a reasonable amount between male and female figures, And so I think that, that's really an important exploration. I would actually do some, read some books about the women that you're interested in, or go and watch the movies, or look at have active exploration. What I find is that if I bring my conscious mind to an archetypal figure or a resource figure, if I lean into it with my conscious mind, it's my unconscious, you could say, or the figure leans back.
Yeah.
It's sort of like if I lean towards an archetypal force or a resource, the resource leans back. Another way of saying that is that if I lean towards it with my conscious mind, my unconscious will invite the resource back. Does that sort of make sense?
So what you're saying is like, it's almost like not use your conscious mind to do like the search, like, the Google search on, that's what I'm, to start looking for powerful women or female archetypes in different religions. Cause I like pulling from different religions too. I can have Mary. I do want to learn about Mother Mary Magdalene because she's come up, but I don't know enough to connect yet.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. So I want to learn about that. So I want to bring these in, but it's also like the conscious mind learns more and sees who you're drawn to. And then the unconscious brings them in, right? At kind of a deeper, lower level, right?
Yeah.
It's right.
I'll message you privately with some suggestions around Mary Magdalene, because she's really, because, she was, because it was a patriarchal society, she didn't get good press,
No,
but actually
she didn't.
she was there all the way through, she was there at all the different stages of Jesus's life, and she was probably the most senior of the disciples. So anyway, anything else from you? Anything else?
No, I think, just one more question. So I actually started adding it to my meditation in the morning, bringing in resources. Do you just have any idea as a meditation? Just adding that to already a meditation, suggestions to, like kind of opening up and calling that in, resources in.
What, is there a question there?
Yeah, the question is, do you have any suggestions on how to bring in resources in a meditation?
I mean, I center, I do body mind sort of meditation, get myself centered and do all of that. And then very often because I do the life calling work, I invite my life calling. But a key thing is I like the idea that there's a circle around me of resource people, my community of saints. And so, I mean, I sort of think, first we start with one powerful figure, and then we have two, and then we can have half a dozen. And then there can be a second row, a circle around, circle upon circle. And then different people can sort of push their way to the front, or, they just appear. They don't have to push, because everybody's very polite up there, but, and to do that regularly. So there are three particular Tibetan Buddhist resources for me. Two of whom are men and one's a woman, and I have them in my meditation every single day. And I have them in, if I wake at night, I'll call on one, and I consciously and actively practice calling on them, because the more I consciously practice calling on them, the more likely they are to come to me unconsciously when I most need them. So. And if you keep calling, then in your time of need, they'll appear without you calling.
Yes.
It's like,
nice.
That thing about learning to drive a car, conscious competence. First you don't know how to do it, unconscious incompetence. Then you practice conscious competence. Then you have, then you're still trying to drive the car with your conscious mind. And but you can't really drive until it's unconscious competence. And the same with this, if we bring our conscious mind, then they'll just start to appear. So I think, reading pictures, images, movies, using all the senses to call on these figures. And it's like, another way of talking about it is like dating, You go on a date with a resource, and the first time round it's all very polite and nice, but you may need quite a lot of, You know, you may need quite a few dates before you have a cuddle, you know. You
Yeah.
know, so it's sort of, you know, it's sort of, I think that, you know, it's good to have lots of dates with the resources and build a long-term relationship with
That's a good metaphor. Thank you.
them. Good. Okay. Paul, I don't want you to comment on the Mary Magdalene thing, but there was somebody else actually who had their hand up before you. Um, so who was it? I can't remember. It was Catherine, wasn't it? So hang on, I'm just going to. Great, Catherine. So yeah, go ahead. What's your question, or how can I support you with um, um, with your psychological resources?
Well, I'm looking for the opposite. So I'm looking for nurturing, loving men,
Great.
because that's what I think I need at the moment.
Yeah. Well, that's so great, isn't it? I was
No, I
going to make a bad joke
haven't
about
got
it.
many in my past,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
there are a few, and not people that were particularly, you know, family or anything like that. And there was a grandfather that I don't remember because he died when I was 4.
Mm.
So apart from that, I'm struggling a bit. You know, a couple of sort of fathers of friends of mine.
I just want to name. I don't want to spend long on it, but I just want to name that there are lots of men who are stuck in their heads, and there are lots of men who don't know the difference between hugging and sexuality, and that all of that will make it more, you know, difficult.
Yeah, but I don't have any men in my life. I have one male friend who lives in
Yeah,
a different
yeah,
country.
yeah,
I don't have any male contact.
yeah.
You know, I work with all women who I don't
Mm.
particularly connect with. And
You want more male contact.
yeah, God, yes, I really miss male company.
Well, what about going and doing sexy South American dancing? You know, fora or something like that. You know.
I've just never, yeah. I mean, I try dating sites, and if they don't fancy you or they don't connect with you, they don't want to stay in
Well,
contact
maybe
with you.
dating sites, I think, only work for some people. I mean, we're slightly off topic, but you know, there are lots of other ways to meet people. You know,
But I've
people.
always been quite open to, you know, making friends through dating sites as well. If
Yeah,
people feel you know, they don't fancy you and they don't want a relationship with
yeah,
you. But what I find is men don't connect in that way.
yeah,
You know, oh, you're not, I don't fancy you, move on.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I
I
haven't
wouldn't.
physically got that connection with anybody in my life at the
Yeah,
moment.
but let's talk about resources for a moment, because I want to
Yeah.
stay on the subject of resources, because that's a different. I mean, so on that topic of you haven't got a connection, go out and get the connections. Go and do things that men that you would like go to. But on the terms of inner resources, you can just take your pick. You can look around the world and say, who is wise, who connects, which men connect with their hearts. Um,
Dalai Lama is perhaps the only one that
yeah,
kind of sprung to mind.
he would cuddle you. You know, he would be there. He would cry when he heard your story. Apparently, when you know he does interviews with people, he still does interviews with anybody who asks. Although I'm sure it's more difficult than it used to be, and he's older now. But he cries almost every time he hears a touching story. So read up on him, or read about him and Desmond Tutu, or look for those figures. It's really an important thing, actually, for all of us, is to look for male archetypal figures that are tender, sweet, deep, and soulful. You know, so much soulfulness has been, you know, hasn't been valued in our society, and a lot of the men that get press coverage or media, you know, are not soulful. So yeah, I think it would be really a great thing to do, to find, you know, to find beautiful, soulful male archetype figure.
I mean, I suppose you find them in fiction.
Yeah, fiction's great. Fiction's great.
That's probably the only place I come across them
Yeah,
otherwise,
yeah.
which is why I was kind of struggling a bit.
Well, some of the saints, some of the psychotherapists, there are quite a lot of male psychotherapists were very tender hearted. men who've done work on themselves, male teachers who've done psychotherapy, personal work.
So how would you find those? Because I mean, the sort of people I know of are not in that sort of genre.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, obviously, somebody like Freud doesn't come under that.
why not? Maybe Jung. What about Jung? Read his autobiography.
Is it hard going?
No, it's easy. Start exploring. So just the same as it is for Sheila, start exploring in the world. Where are the tender, soft-hearted, soulful men that could be inner resources for me? To start to explore that, looking around. Gandhi, or, you know, there are obvious people. Yeah, start looking around.
Okay, but you'd still look at things like fiction.
I would look, yeah, absolutely, I'd look at
Yeah.
fiction. Yeah.
So if I can think of any books where I felt men were.
Yeah. Yeah, because actually what is a resource? There is information in the outside world that you use, but then you build the you build the representation inside your own nervous system. You
I
recreate.
mean, I used to read a lot of Ian Forster.
Yeah. I've run out of time, so I just want everybody to unmute themselves, and thank you.
I wanted to say, not about Mary Magdalene. Sophia wisdom is a feminine principle, and is not could be androgynous.
Thank you, Paul. We've got to go now. It's 18:02. So one word, yeah, to describe how you're feeling right now. Each person.
Content.
Relax.
Like you.
Thankful.
Tender.
Yes.
Excited.
Thoughtful.
Curious.
Grateful.
Oh,
Thoughtful.
Enjoy it.
Anyone not spoken?
Enlightened.
Lovely to see you. I'm late actually. There's a session now on Life Talent Level 2 that starts at 6 o'clock, and so I'm late going to it. If you want to come, you just hang online, and I'll put the link into the chat for you to join it.
Julian, I thought it was level 1, no?
Yeah,
So
level 1. You're right, level 1.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So we come off and then go back on again.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
can I just, this is recorded. Does that mean you can watch it again or
Yes.
listen again? Okay.
Yeah.
Then does it go on the Facebook page?
No, you don't get. You'll get an email on Saturday with the details.
Okay. And Life Talent Level 1, I mean, I can't go to it now, but it sounds interesting.
Well, that will be in the newsletter. More details will be about that in the newsletter.
Okay.
So I've just got to pay attention because I'm actually late for my own meeting.
All right. Okay.
I'm going to put the registration link.
Julian.
I'm going to put the registration link into the chat for anyone who wants it. We're going to spend 45 minutes on just talking about Life Talent Level 1. Great, here we go. It's in the chat now if you want to come. And I'll see you there if you're coming.